The summer of 1877 was supposed to mark the end of war on the northern plains. Instead, it became the season when every promise, every fragile thread of peace began to snap. At Red Cloud and Spotted Tail agencies, rumors moved faster than riders, and mistranslations carried the weight of bullets. Soldiers gathered, scouts vanished into the night, and in the center of a tightening vice stood one man, Crazy Horse, caught between the demands of a government he did not trust and the hopes of a people who were beginning to fracture around him. This is the moment when alliances falter, when fear becomes a weapon, and when a leader who had never bent finally finds himself surrounded not by enemies from afar, but by the voices of his own nation. In this episode, we enter the final turning of the hoop, the days when misunderstanding, pride, and betrayal converge on the White River, and the fate of the Thunder Dreamer begins to darken. This is Chronicles of the Old West, Episode 9 of our series, Spirit of the Thunder People, The Life of Crazy Horse.
The summer of 1877 had already tested the fragile peace on the northern plains, but nothing prepared the Army of the West for the sudden shadow cast by the Nez Perce. 800 warriors and their families, refusing the confines of an Idaho reservation, had carved a fighting retreat through the bitter heart of the Rockies. By early August, they crossed the Continental Divide and stepped into the vast jurisdiction of Phil Sheridan's military division of the Missouri. Sheridan, ever the pragmatist, moved swiftly. Troops from Dakota and the Platte were mobilized. General George Crook, fresh from quelling labor riots in the East, was recalled to Omaha. And in the shadow of the Bighorn Mountains, Colonel Wesley Merritt readied 5 companies of the 5th Cavalry at Camp Brown. Yet for all the blue-coated columns converging on the war zone, Sheridan understood that Indian scouts would decide the campaign's speed and success. His eye turned to the White River agencies in Nebraska, Red Cloud and Spotted Tail, where thousands of Lakota and Arapaho had only recently surrendered. Among them were the northern bands, still restless under the weight of reservation life. And at the center of that restlessness stood one man, Crazy Horse. The wires hummed with urgency. On August 28th, Sheridan urged Crook to recall 100 Indian scouts who had been sent home just days earlier. By the 29th, orders flew to Camp Robinson, ready the scouts. More auxiliaries were requested. Lieutenant William Clark, the earnest young officer who had accepted Crazy Horse's surrender back in May, found himself at the center of a whirlwind. With interpreter Frank Gruard at his side and the steady presence of agency chiefs, Clark began the delicate work of persuasion. The Arapahoes, led by the reliable First Sergeant Sharpnose of Company A, pledged full cooperation without hesitation. The agency Oglalas, too, responded with guarded willingness. 100 volunteers stepped forward alongside the enlisted scouts. Clark felt a cautious optimism. Even the matter of a planned delegation to Washington could be managed, or so he hoped. Sheridan, however, refused any delay. The delegation would go east as scheduled, but not everything bent so easily to the Army's will. Spotted Tail, the influential Brule leader, stalled negotiations over pay and conditions before riding home, leaving the question of Brule participation hanging like smoke over the council fires. More troubling were the northern Lakotas. Touch the Clouds and High Bear arrived at Red Cloud Agency on the 29th, summoned to discuss the deployment of 60 scouts from Spotted Tail's people. The proposal ignited hubbub and excitement. The Northern Scouts, who saw their role as keepers of village order and peacemakers among their own, recoiled. Touch the Clouds delivered a blunt message to Clark's messengers. The Great Father has washed the blood from our faces. If we put it on again, we will never take it off. That evening, Touch the Clouds rode into Crazy Horse's village. He found the northern camp in fierce debate. Early that morning, the council had resolved to depart immediately for the hunting grounds to join Sitting Bull. Clark's request that Crazy Horse and 20 men of Company C join the Nez Perce campaign threw the village into prolonged argument. Crazy Horse's first reaction mirrored his kinsman's. "You have asked us to become peaceful. How can you ask us now to go to war again?" Yet as the sun crossed the sky, the mood shifted. Little Big Man shaped the discussion with sharp words, but it was Crazy Horse who saw opportunity in the crisis. If his warriors served as scouts, it could provide the perfect excuse to leave the agency, not as fugitives hunted by soldiers, but as allies of the United States. Messengers rode between villages, linking the hunt with the campaign. Crazy Horse threw himself into the effort, urging enlisted scouts and others to join the Northern Band. He argued that American troops could not fight Indians effectively. The scouts must be allowed their own tactics. By nightfall, a fragile united front had formed between Crazy Horse and Touch the Clouds. They would demand high pay, $35 a day, for each combatant scout, and insist on fighting under their own leaders. Once on the hunting grounds, they would assist against the Nez Perce. With this plan set, the chiefs retired to their teepees. The morning of August 31st dawned clear and tense. A 20-man party left the northern village, most of them Crazy Horse's young warriors from the Last-Born Child Society. Their presence signaled the war chief's personal stake. At 9 o'clock, they filed into Lieutenant Clark's quarters at Camp Robinson, seating themselves on the floor. Touch the Clouds took the place of honor, flanked by Crazy Horse and High Bear. The chair usually reserved for Crazy Horse remained empty. Clark entered with Gruard and 3 bears, a loyal Oglala scout corporal. Through Gruard, Clark proposed that the scouts head north to fight the Nez Perce. Touch the Clouds rose first, delivering an earnest, forceful speech that echoed through the small room. "We washed the blood from our faces," he began, "and came in and surrendered and wanted peace." He recounted every promise broken, giving up guns, enlisting as scouts for peace, abandoning the buffalo hunt, even turning toward Washington. Now, they were asked to paint their faces for war once more. Yet, he concluded reluctantly, they would go north and fight under their own leaders. They would surround the Nez Perce, whip them, and bring peace. Crazy Horse followed with a briefer statement, reaffirming the deception they felt. He reminded Clark of the surrender terms, that he would never again make war, and how the request now contradicted every assurance. The substantive speeches ended, but the real storm was only beginning. Clark pressed the question directly. Would Crazy Horse and his warriors assist the military against the Nez Perce? "I was going out there to hunt," the war chief replied. What followed was a slow unraveling. Crazy Horse made his position unmistakably clear. His village intended to leave the agency at once. When Clark challenged how they could sustain a buffalo hunt with ammunition sales forbidden, Crazy Horse's temper rose. According to Clark's later account, the Oglala war chief declared he would break open the doors of the agency trading posts and take what he needed if it was not issued. His tone had grown openly defiant, overbearing, and insulting. Still, even in the heat of the moment, Crazy Horse extended a clear quid pro quo. Allow the northern villages to depart on their hunt, and once his people were out on the plains, the scouts would cooperate with the soldiers. They would help track and fight the Nez Perce when the army overtook them. It was a pragmatic compromise, born of desperation, an attempt to honor both his people's need for freedom and the Army's urgent request. But Clark refused outright. He had no interest in the lodges, the women, or the slow-moving village. He wanted only the fighting men, now under military command. The council, already strained, descended into chaos. Interpreter Frank Gruard, visibly flustered and growing frightened by the rising voices, began to falter. Key statements were twisted in translation. Touch the Cloud's reluctant offer of cooperation was distorted into something far more menacing. Suggestions that the northern scouts might join the Nez Perce and turn against the soldiers. Crazy Horse's words grew darker still through Gruard's unsteady tongue. One chilling version that reached Clark claimed Crazy Horse had said they would go north and fight until not a white man is left. Into this tinderbox stepped 3 bears, the loyal Oglala scout corporal and first war leader of the Kiuksa band. Rising abruptly from the floor, he roared at Crazy Horse and his party, accusing them of plotting to murder Lieutenant Clark where he sat. "If you want to kill anybody," 3 bears thundered, "kill me first. You will not touch my friend. The room is full of armed soldiers. If you start trouble, not one of you will leave this building alive." The office erupted. Warriors shifted on the floor. Voices clashed. Confusion and anger filled the air. In the midst of the uproar, Gruard, now thoroughly rattled, slipped out and fetched Billy Garnett to take over interpreting. Garnett crossed the room and spoke quietly with Crazy Horse. He could see at once that the war chief was not right. Something in him had hardened. When Garnett asked once more if Crazy Horse would serve with the scouts against the Nez Perce, the answer came sharp and final. "Hansney, no." Crazy Horse turned to Garnett, his voice steady but resolute. "I told him what I want him to do. We are going to move. We are going out there to hunt." Then, loud enough for Clark to hear through the new interpreter, he delivered a cutting taunt. "You are too soft. You can't fight." Clark tried to explain that war on the hunting grounds made any hunt impossible, but Crazy Horse cut him off. "If you want to fight the Nez Perce, go out and fight them. We don't want to fight. We are going out to hunt." With that, Crazy Horse rose to his feet. Touch the Clouds, High Bear, and the rest of the northern delegation followed him without another word. They walked out of Clark's quarters, leaving the lieutenant stunned and the fragile peace of the White River agencies shattered. Lieutenant Clark wasted no time. Still shaken from the explosive council, he strode to Lieutenant Colonel Bradley's headquarters and delivered a stark report. Crazy Horse and Touch the Clouds with High Bear came up and told me that they were going north on the warpath. Whether born of mistranslation, genuine fear, or a lethal mix of both, the die appeared cast. Bradley immediately wired the alarming news to Omaha and Chicago. Cavalry reinforcements were urgently summoned from Fort Laramie. Major Julius W. Mason, commanding Companies E and G of the 3rd Cavalry, began a grueling forced march toward Camp Robinson. Back in the northern village, Crazy Horse and Touch the Clouds gathered their headmen to review the morning's bitter confrontation. They had reached a dark conclusion. Major Hart's battalion on the Tongue River was not marching against the Nez Perce at all. It was heading north to intercept Sitting Bull and block any return to the Powder River country. The Army's true target, they believed, was their own people. All cooperation with the soldiers must end at once. Envoys rode swiftly to the agency bands carrying the new orders. Meanwhile, a far larger council convened in the Oglala tribal village, one that included all 864 adult males. After long and serious debate, the Oglalas declared their collective will. They wanted no more fighting. From this day forward, they would live in peace. To enforce that decision, they resolved to control Crazy Horse's restless northern village by force, if necessary. Agency Akechita, Oglala peacekeepers, would act within a 22-mile radius of the agency. Beyond that line, the Army could pursue any fugitives as it saw fit. As evening fell across the White River Valley, tension thickened like smoke. Near the agency, 150 scouts had gathered, well mounted, armed, and ready to ride north against the Nez Perce. Companies A and B were there, along with 50 more from Spotted Tail Agency and 100 eager volunteers. Even a few of Crazy Horse's own Company C scouts waited among them, still honoring the plan their chief had approved before the disastrous meeting. Then, out of the gathering dusk, appeared Akechita warriors from Crazy Horse's camp. They carried a blunt proclamation. The entire Nez Perce campaign was a ruse. The real purpose was to strike Sitting Bull and destroy the last free bands. Crazy Horse and Touch the Clouds forbade any cooperation with the soldiers. All scouts must return home immediately. Any attempt to leave would be met by the full fighting strength of the northern nation. The message struck like a thunderclap. One by one, the scouts melted away into the night. From the perspective of the White River agencies, the carefully planned Nez Perce expedition had collapsed into ruins. Telegraph wires burned through the darkness. General Crook, still traveling west by rail toward Camp Brown, urged Bradley and Clark to show restraint and not force the scouts to march. An angry Phil Sheridan countermanded him. Bradley fired back a grim warning. There is a good chance for trouble here, and there is plenty of bad blood. I think the departure of the scouts will bring on a collision here. By the morning of September 1st, the orders had changed. The scouts would not be required for the Nez Perce campaign after all. But the deeper message was unmistakable. If Crazy Horse attempted to lead his people onto the hunting grounds, it would now be regarded as open war. The stage was set for a final, deadly endgame on White River. Two worlds, blue-coated soldiers and red-painted warriors, stood balanced on the razor's edge of misunderstanding, mistranslation, pride, and fear. Crazy Horse, the Thunder Dreamer, who had never truly bent the knee, now faced the bitter consequence of refusing to paint his face for war again. The summer that had begun with surrender was rushing headlong toward a tragic and bloody reckoning. In the fading light of a late summer day, September 1st, 1887, anticlimax settled like dust over Crazy Horse's village along the White River. What should have been a time of tense expectation, the gathering of scouts for one final strike northward, had been deflated by Lieutenant Clark's latest order suspending all movements. The war chief's supporters and those of Little Big Man alike felt the sting. Without the cover of official scout duties in the Nez Perce campaign, Crazy Horse could no longer frame departure as duty. The stitching of village consensus began to unravel, thread by thread. Rumors whipped through the lodges like prairie fire, troops massing, arrests imminent, arms and ponies to be seized. In the agency camps, impatience with the war chief had hardened into open opposition. For nearly 3 months, Red Cloud and American Horse had warned against any conciliation. In the past 2 weeks, Crazy Horse's stubbornness had cost him even his last allies in the agency hierarchy. Within 36 hours, the tribal council would draw a line in the sand. Any northern departure would shatter friendly relations. War would exist between the agency bands and the northern villages. A third shadow loomed. Messengers from Sitting Bull had slipped into camp. The Hunk Papa leader, safe in grandmother's land across the border, offered no call to arms. Flight now meant a grueling month-long trek into Canada or another brutal winter war on the hunting grounds. Only the most intractable would choose that path. More and more voices turned toward Little Big Man's moderation. Crazy Horse also kept quiet lines open with Fast Bull's holdouts, 50 lodges drifting along the western Badlands edge, within striking distance of Red Cloud Agency. Surrender talks at Spotted Tail were advancing. On August 27th, 22 had given themselves up. The Hunk Papa faction still pushed for Sitting Bull, but momentum was shifting. By early September, another 15 lodges, including Crazy Horse's old comrade Low Dog, prepared to yield. The war chief's influence, once magnetic, was slipping away. Yet Crazy Horse pressed on. Against rising objections, he urged an imminent departure, preferably under cover of night, to avoid open rupture. Big Road and Iron Crow offered tentative support, but Little Big Man, eloquent, respected, a master of council rhetoric, began rebuilding the moderate consensus. The War Council had no voice to match him. By afternoon on September 2nd, more than 100 lodges stood ready to break with their war chief. The first visible fracture came with Touch the Clouds. The towering Mini-Conjou leader had followed Crazy Horse through the tense meeting with Clark, but recent developments pulled him back to his own people. When he left for Spotted Tail Agency, 8 lodges of Mini-Conjous went with him, led by Low Bear. They paused at the Red Cloud Agency stockade, where Agent Irwin counted 62 souls, issued rations, and breathed relief at even this small defection. No open quarrel marked their departure. Crazy Horse could not risk alienating Touch the Clouds, but the loss cut deep. Among them was the family of Red Hawk, a trusted war comrade. The once loyal Mini-Conjou contingent of some 45 lodges had been a pillar. Now it crumbled. At Camp Sheridan, near Spotted Tail Agency, the return of Touch the Clouds threw the military command into a state of sudden alarm and urgent reassessment. Earlier dispatches sent by Lieutenant Clark from Red Cloud Agency had painted a troubling picture. They portrayed the towering Mini-Conjou chief as a central figure in the growing conflict with Crazy Horse, and warned that his village might need to be surrounded alongside the Oglala war chief's camp. The implication was clear. Touch the Clouds could no longer be trusted. But when the Mini-Conjou leader arrived in person, the story changed dramatically. In a heated face-to-face confrontation, Touch the Clouds angrily accused Frank Grouard, the Army's trusted scout and interpreter, of lying and deliberately mistranslating his words. The charge was serious, and it carried weight. Louis Bordeaux, the respected agency interpreter who knew the Lakota language and people well, backed Touch the Clouds up. Agent James Lee and Captain Daniel W. Burke, commander at Camp Sheridan, listened carefully. After hearing the chief's passionate defense and Bordeaux's corroboration, both men became convinced of the loyalty of Touch the Clouds and the Mini-Conjous and Sans Arcs under his influence. They no longer believed these bands intended to bolt north for war. Adding to their caution was fresh news. Fast Bull's holdout camp was on the verge of surrender at Spotted Tail Agency. A premature military roundup now risked triggering exactly the kind of panic and bloodshed the Army hoped to avoid. One wrong move could send frightened families fleeing into the hills or spark a desperate fight. Determined to plead the case for his northern charges and prevent unnecessary violence, Agent Lee left Camp Sheridan at dawn on September 2nd. Riding with him was his wife, Lucy W. Lee, who taught a small class of Lakota children at the agency school. Their journey to Camp Robinson would prove pivotal in the rapidly unfolding drama. Meanwhile, Camp Robinson pulsed with urgent military activity. Fresh reinforcements had just arrived. Major Mason's 2 companies, hardened by a grueling forced march from Fort Laramie. Not long after, General George Crook himself, accompanied by his trusted aide, Lieutenant John G. Bourke, reached headquarters. They were exhausted after an 80-mile ride from the railroad at Sydney, but there was no time for rest. Crook quickly reviewed the latest reports. Turning to Lieutenant Clark, who knew the Oglalas better than most, he asked for the true temperature among the agency Indians. Clark did not hesitate. He assured the general that the chiefs were united in their view. The safety of everyone, Indian and white, now demanded the deposition of Crazy Horse and the complete breaking up of his band. Confident that all reinforcements would be in position before nightfall, Crook made his decision. He ordered Lieutenant Bradley to command the operation. At first light the next morning, the Army would simultaneously surround both northern villages. The warriors were to be completely disarmed. The villages themselves would then be dismantled, with individual families scattered and enrolled among their relatives in the established agency bands. Yet Crook was no blunt instrument. Acutely aware of Indian sensitivities, he gave careful instructions for the loyal Oglalas. They were to move their camps and raise a single united village on White Clay Creek, 2 miles southeast of the agency. There, he would meet them in full council the following afternoon, September 3rd. Publicly, nothing was said about the planned military surrounds. Behind the scenes, however, Crook arranged secret consultations with Red Cloud and the other leading chiefs. A private messenger was also dispatched to Spotted Tail Agency, summoning the influential Brule head chief for confidential talks. That same day, the Oglala Council issued a powerful, formal statement. Once a mighty people, they acknowledged, the Lakotas had been reduced to their present small numbers through years of fighting the whites, upon whom they were now dependent. They therefore resolved unanimously to embrace peace. Any band that attempted to leave for the north would be treated as an enemy. The line was drawn. All Lakotas remaining north of White River would be regarded as hostiles by the Oglala Nation itself. The pressure grew even sharper. At a gathering of Indian scouts, No Water, and old enemy of Crazy Horse, the man who had shot him point blank in the face stood and declared bluntly that he would kill Crazy Horse with his own hands. Yet ultimatum walked hand in hand with conciliation. The council dispatched a final deputation to the northern village. He-Dog, respected, steady, was chosen to deliver the keynote. Dressed in finest war regalia mixed with scout blue uniforms, the envoys made a colorful procession around the agency village before riding toward White River. At Camp Robinson, Agent Lee arrived early afternoon. He insisted to Bradley and Crook that Touch the Clouds had no intention of going north. Crook, weighing the conflicting accounts, began to shift. "Mr. Lee," he said gravely, "I don't want to make any mistake, for it would, to the Indians, be the basest treachery." The surround of Touch the Clouds village was suspended. Operations would focus solely on Crazy Horse. In the northern village, the War Council prepared to receive Red Cloud's embassy. Crazy Horse, exhausted by days of heated debate and sleepless nights, had withdrawn. He spoke quietly with Nellie, his wife, his confidant, who relayed agency rumors of imminent arrest and urged him to seek refuge at Spotted Tail Agency. Early afternoon brought two unknown white men in civilian clothes without interpreters. They entered Crazy Horse's teepee, claimed to be Army officers, and invited him to Crook's council the next day on White Clay Creek. They shook hands awkwardly, offered 2 cigars and an open-bladed penknife as a goodwill gift, then departed. The visit unsettled the war chief deeply. Later, recounting it to He-Dog, he stared at the knife. The bare blade seemed an omen, trouble coming, weapons unsheathed. Sleep-deprived, his judgment clouded, he stuffed the items under his blankets and left the teepee, seeking solitude for prayer to Wakantanka. Mid-afternoon, He-Dog's deputation arrived. Seated in the council teepee, they faced elders, headmen, and warriors. Crazy Horse was absent. Little Big Man and the deciders held the place of honor. The envoys hammered one theme: the unwillingness to yield invited disaster. Crook was at Camp Robinson, coordinating a major operation: arrests, confiscations, possible bloodshed. The Oglala Nation had pledged peace and would aid troops against hostile kin. There was a way out. Move the village to White Clay Creek, join the agency bands, counsel with Crook for peace. He-Dog closed powerfully. All who love their wife and children, let them come across the creek with me. All who want their wife and children to be killed by the soldiers, let them stay where they are. The council adjourned. As He-Dog and Ironhawk crossed the village circle, word came: Crazy Horse was home and wished to see them. In his teepee, the war chief reached under the blankets and produced the cigars and knife. Without preamble, he told of the visitors, the uneasy handshake, the troubling gift. "I thought the gift of the knife meant trouble was coming," he said. Only at the end did he mention fear of the council itself. He-Dog, dismayed, pressed, "Does this mean that you will be my enemy if I move across the creek?" Crazy Horse laughed softly. I am no white man. They are the only people that make rules for other people. There is plenty of room. Camp where you please. Dusk fell before consensus formed. Little Big Man spoke for the majority. The village would move south of White River. Little Hawk's loyalty to Crazy Horse prevented full unanimity, so tribespeople were permitted to choose. About 115 lodges followed Little Big Man across the Twilit Valley into the Peace Zone. Roughly 100 teepees remained, some 600 souls still loyal to their war chief. Younger warriors predominated. Most bad faces had gone with Little Big Man. Oyupes and Hunk Patilas split. Crazy Horse's immediate relatives, his bodyguard, and loyal Miniconjus, Sansarks, and Brulés stayed. Elders and holy men expecting no favors from the agency. At Camp Robinson, news arrived that Fast Bull's camp was surrendering. Crook suspended the surround of Crazy Horse's village and sent messengers inviting the war chief to the council. One last chance. Clark asked He Dog to host an informal feast, hoping face-to-face talk might ease tensions. But weary and suspicious, Crazy Horse declined graciously. Some people over there have said too much. I don't want to talk to them anymore. By nightfall, on September 2nd, Crazy Horse stood dangerously isolated, politically and in spirit. His following halved. His mind, always leaning toward the otherworldly, had grown brittle under exhaustion and relentless pressure. He left the village 3 times daily for private prayer. Sleep, when it came at all, proved fitful and haunted. His wife, Nellie, later spoke of an equivocal dream that disturbed his restless nights. A vision in which he was told he would not die between sun and sun, meaning not in the full light of day, nor would he fall by a bullet. An unclasped penknife had fixated him, yet the massive defection seemed to barely register. His commitment to keep my country clashed with deepening quietism and the healer's calling that had stirred 6 months earlier. Torn between passivity and defiance, messianic pressures pulling at him. The most apolitical of men now bore leadership alone. That night, Black Shawl slept apart. Crazy Horse and Nellie sat talking late. It was their last night together on Earth. The hoop was breaking. The Lakota people's spirit, once fierce and united, now fractured under the weight of survival, rumor, and the inexorable advance of a new order. Crazy Horse, the man who had never signed a treaty, who had kept his country in his heart, faced the loneliest trial of all. Not battle, but the slow unraveling of the world. He knew. Daylight broke over the upper White River Valley on Monday, September 3rd, 1877. The air carried the crisp promise of autumn, but beneath it lay a heavy tension that no one could ignore. Shortly before midnight, the night before, the last of Colonel Bradley's reinforcements had settled into hasty bivouac on the prairie north of Camp Robinson. 8 companies of the 3rd Cavalry and 3 infantry companies now concentrated there. Even at chronically low manning levels, over 600 regulars stood at Bradley's disposal. The agency Oglalas could field more than 700 warriors to aid their Wasatchu allies, and the loyal Arapahoes could add more than 100 active fighters. Such a force outnumbered Crazy Horse's depleted following by nearly 10 to 1. The northern villagers felt the shift immediately. The sullen defiance that had hardened their faces for days began to crack into something more anxious, more uncertain. Crazy Horse registered the change. As the sun climbed, the war chief made one of his characteristic drastic shifts of mind. He decided to reopen dialogue with the military. Perhaps it was the quiet fear in Nellie Larrabee's eyes, his wife, deeply worried for the man she loved. Perhaps it was the growing misgivings among even his most die-hard supporters. The warriors still backed a secret nighttime departure in theory, but fear of punishment by troops and Oglala relatives was breeding serious doubt. Messengers from General Crook arrived with a personal invitation. Crazy Horse should attend the council at the Oglala tribal village that afternoon. Crook wanted to hear what Crazy Horse had to say for himself. Only the evening before, the war chief had refused He Dog's invitation to a preliminary feast. Now, warily, he accepted the olive branch. Crazy Horse called Clark to the council, recalled Red Feather. He wanted to tell White Hat that he and his people were ready to go back where they came from. It was nothing new. Everyone at the agency had known for over a week that Crazy Horse wanted to take his people north. What was new was the tone, a rare note of moderation, a willingness for calm talk instead of confrontation. By singling out Lieutenant Clark, White Hat, the war chief signaled he was ready to negotiate an open departure under military watch. For one fragile, flickering moment, an exit strategy seemed within reach. The bitter impasse of defiance and mistrust appeared ready to crack. Then came the decisive twist. General Crook and Lieutenant Clark climbed into the ambulance at Camp Robinson and started for the Oglala tribal village. The wagon creaked and swayed along the dusty track, its canvas top snapping in the prairie wind. They had arranged to collect their interpreters, Billy Garnett and Baptiste Poirier, Big Bat, at Frank Yates's trading store, just outside the agency compound. As the ambulance lumbered up, the two officers saw Garnett and Poirier standing in urgent conversation with a Lakota man. Billy Garnett stepped forward and introduced him. Woman Dress, one of Clark's most trusted Oglala scouts. The Indian's face was grave. What he said next stopped the general cold. Woman Dress warned that Crazy Horse was coming to the council, but not to talk. He would arrive with 60 warriors. Once the talks began, the war chief planned to pick a quarrel with Crook, step close as if to shake hands, and drive a knife into the general's heart. At that signal, his men would rise up and slaughter Clark and every other officer present. In the chaos and panic that followed, the northern village would bolt for the open hunting grounds. The astonished general pressed for details. Garnett and Poirier vouched for Woman Dress. The story traced back to Little Wolf, another trustee, who had supposedly eavesdropped outside Crazy Horse's teepee the previous evening. Little Wolf reported to Lone Bear, who told Woman Dress. Crook was incredulous, but convinced enough by Clark to turn back. Clark instructed Garnett to attend the tribal council anyway, and quietly summoned the loyal agency chiefs to Camp Robinson for confidential talks. The northern leaders were to know nothing. The ambulance turned around. Billy Garnett reached the Oglala Tribal Council around noon. Neither Crazy Horse nor any northern leaders were present, already a detail that sat uneasily with Woman Dress's dramatic tale. American Horse stepped out, announced that Crook had received a letter and couldn't attend, then quietly passed the real summons to the chiefs. Garnett hurried back to the post, assured the plan was in motion. By early afternoon, as officers waited, Crook had become convinced of Crazy Horse's treachery. A final invitation went to the war chief to come to post headquarters. Crazy Horse, according to Bourke, paid no attention. Around 2:30 p.m., the agency chiefs filed into Colonel Bradley's quarters. Crook, Clark, and interpreters, Garnett, Poirier, and the reinstated Frank Grouard faced 14 Oglala leaders: Red Cloud, Little Wound, Young Man Afraid of His Horse, American Horse, Yellow Bear, and others, along with warrior representatives like Three Bears, No Flesh, and No Water, Crazy Horse's old enemy. Crook spoke of loyalty to a government that fed and clothed them. He retold Woman Dress's story of the planned murder. The chiefs expressed surprise. They declared that Crazy Horse was such a desperate man, it would be necessary to kill him. Crook demurred, but asked for the best way to capture him and disarm his band. A strategy formed quickly. Each chief would select 2 of his best warriors. A strong war party would surround Crazy Horse's village that night, call for the war chief and scouts to surrender their arms. If no response, force would be used. Crook approved, ordered ammunition issued, and impressed secrecy on the chiefs. He then prepared to depart for Cheyenne. In private conversation with Clark after the main council broke up, the agency chiefs circled back to the same dark theme. They were blunt. Crazy Horse was too dangerous to take alive. He would have to be killed. Clark hesitated. The young lieutenant was uneasy with the casual talk of assassination, but the chiefs pressed hard. Finally, reluctantly, he conceded. $300, he offered, and my own famous sorrel racer, the fastest horse at the post. It was a substantial bounty, and the chiefs nodded with grim satisfaction. Clark then led the group across the parade ground to the commissary. There, under the slanting afternoon light, he issued them ammunition, boxes of cartridges handed over in heavy silence. The transaction carried the unmistakable weight of a death warrant. By the time the Oglala leaders mounted up and rode out of Camp Robinson, the sun was already low, painting the White River Valley in long golden shadows. Afternoon was waning fast, and with it, the last fragile hopes for a peaceful resolution. Crazy Horse's fragile trust had already shattered. He learned the council with Crook was canceled, then received a summons to headquarters. Unaware of the specific lies, but sensing the about-faces, he gave no reply. Instead, he pushed harder for immediate departure. He sent Akichita across the river to recall Little Big Man's defectors, only to be rejected by He-Dog. Disappointed, Crazy Horse left the village again to pray in a quiet place. Meanwhile, elements in the agency village escalated. There had been no truth to the murder plot against Crook. Little Wolf was a familiar figure around Crazy Horse's teepee. He, Lone Bear, Long Chin, and Woman Dress had often idled there with hooded blankets. Perhaps an overheard fragment about officers and knives was wildly exaggerated. Red Feather dismissed it outright. This was not true. Years later, Little Wolf denied ever telling such a story. The fabrication likely originated with a small group of leaders, most probably Red Cloud and American Horse, opposed to restoring Crazy Horse to favor. Woman Dress was Red Cloud's first cousin and loyal Bad-Face band member. American Horse was even more vehement. He later claimed he would have shot Crazy Horse himself on September 5th if others hadn't intervened. Late that afternoon, as the Oglala chiefs returned from their tense meeting with Crook, American Horse helped orchestrate yet another bold and calculated demonstration. Within the Loafer Band Council, a plan took shape to force the crisis they wanted: the public abduction of Nellie Larrabee, Crazy Horse's wife. A party of warriors formed quickly. Leading them was Red Shirt, head Akachita of the Loafers, accompanied by the hardened fighters High Bear, Apples, and Eagle Horn. At the front of the column rode a visibly reluctant little bear, also known as Sioux Bob, the young man to whom Nellie had once been promised before Crazy Horse claimed her. Little Bear's discomfort was plain, but the others gave him no room to back down. They mounted up and rode straight into the northern village, horses kicking up dust in the slanting golden light. Dismounting before Crazy Horse's teepee, they formed a line and advanced with deliberate menace. Little Bear stood at the head, stiff and uncertain. When his voice failed him completely, Red Shirt and the others stepped forward, their voices loud and demanding. "Give us back the woman," they declared. "She belongs to Little Bear." The tense silence that followed was broken when Worm, Crazy Horse's father, emerged from the lodge. His voice calm but firm, he told them his son was not at home. A moment later, Nellie herself stooped through the teepee entrance. The warriors closed in. As she was compelled to mount Little Bear's pony, one of the party drew a rifle and shot Crazy Horse's best horse dead where it stood, tethered beside the lodge. The sharp crack of the shot echoed across the village. No resistance came. Not a single warrior stepped forward to stop them. It was a classic Lakota bluff, and it worked. The victors of the Little Bighorn had been publicly cowed by their own relatives. For many in the northern camp, the humiliating scene only deepened their growing despair. For the young warriors, their absent war chief's recurring prayer retreats now seemed deeply disturbing. A crisis had arrived, and he was not there. Before day's end, many favored crossing White River to join Little Big Man's defectors. Crazy Horse returned to devastating news: the loss of his second wife, a woman with whom he shared unusual trust and passion. Politically, it signaled the agency Oglalas's determination to force confrontation. He realized they had been ready to shoot him down. In council, he chose not to escalate the blood feud. Crazy Horse never did anything, recalled his cousin Eagle Elk. He only stayed away from the loafers altogether. By late afternoon, the War Council's morale reached its lowest ebb. Black Fox and other key warriors refused to follow an immediate move north. The mercurial leader could no longer give clear direction. The village was fracturing. Back at the agency and at Camp Robinson, serious doubts were beginning to surface. Agent Irwin, deeply disturbed by the growing rumors of a planned nighttime arrest, went straight to Lieutenant Colonel Bradley's quarters. He brought with him He-Dog, the respected northern leader who had recently defected. The three men, 2 officers, and 1 civilian agent, along with a key Lakota ally, stood together, united in their unease. Bradley was angry. Crook and Clark had deliberately kept him and Irwin out of their secretive loop. Now, with surprise already compromised and whispers spreading through the camps, the post commander made a decisive intervention. He immediately summoned Clark and overruled the original plan. No covert Indian-led operation under cover of darkness. Instead, the arrest of Crazy Horse would take place the next morning in broad daylight with the full involvement of the U.S. Army. Word was sent out carefully to avoid triggering a stampede, but the question of Spotted Tail's role ignited a heated debate. Lieutenant Clark and Bradley wanted the powerful Brûlé chief present to help legitimize the operation. Agent Lee, responsible for Spotted Tail agency, pushed back fiercely. He argued that Spotted Tail's presence at Red Cloud could spark trouble back home. Voices rose in Bradley's quarters as the three men clashed over the best way forward. In the end, Lee won a reluctant concession. He and Spotted Tail would be allowed to leave for the Brûlé agency after midnight. As evening deepened, Billy Garnett delivered the updated instructions to the loyal chiefs. Report before sunrise, with warriors for arms and ammunition. No night operation. At Crazy Horse's village, Red Feather brought news of the reward offered for the war chief's killer. He found Crazy Horse subdued and fatalistic. The war chief unfastened his Scout Sharps rifle and presented it to Red Feather in a symbolic abdication. He indicated the knife at his waist. He was waiting like that for the soldiers, Red Feather recalled. Crazy Horse was now ready to fight and die as a simple warrior. Half the village would melt away before dawn, some to Little Big Man, some toward Spotted Tail agency. With the village in meltdown and Crazy Horse in despair, the day drew to midnight. For the war chief, it had been one of dizzying mood swings and political reversals. Grimly, he relinquished leadership, relieved of an intolerable burden. Expecting attack at any moment, he prepared to die fighting, alone, like a thunder dreamer, in defense of what remained of the northern nation.
And that brings us to the end of this chapter. As always, this series is a dramatized retelling grounded in real people, real places, and real events. We strive to honor the historical record while shaping a narrative that lets us feel the human weight of these final, fragile days. Certain moments are adapted for clarity and dramatic flow, but the heart of the story remains rooted in documented accounts and the lived experiences of the Lakota and their allies. Next time on Chronicles of the Old West, the circle tightens. The northern village stands divided, its unity frayed by fear, exhaustion, and the relentless pressure of the agencies. Old friendships strain, old enemies find new leverage, and as soldiers mass on the prairie and councils fracture in the night, Crazy Horse, once the unshakable center of the northern bands, finds the ground shifting beneath his feet. Every choice narrows. Every path leads toward a reckoning no one can yet name, but everyone can feel coming. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Your support helps us bring more of these stories to life. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for our final episode in this series, only on Chronicles of the Old West.